If I had known how it would all turn out, maybe I wouldn't have gotten so upset. Then again, being an ordinary guy with normal reactions, I probably would have anyway. "Hey James," I called to the man sitting at the bar. "Don't see you in here very often." "Oh, hi Kevin," he replied sullenly. "I don't frequent pubs much, but tonight's an exception." He didn't look too happy, and to be fair, it wasn't much of a pub. What should I say? He definitely didn't seem happy at all. "What's up, mate?" I asked carefully. James wasn't exactly a good friend of mine. In fact, apart from the odd party, I hardly saw him. His wife Lillian and my wife Violet, however, were as thick as thieves, so I knew, or at least thought I knew, quite a bit about their lives. "It's all right, Kevin," he continued miserably, barely meeting my eyes. "I'm not blaming you. It's not really your fault." "Eh? What? My fault?" I had no idea what he was talking about. "What's not my fault, James?" I asked tentatively, not wanting to upset him further. Instead of answering, he just sat there, resting his chin on his tightly clenched fists, and let out a long, drawn-out sigh. "Come on, mate. What's up?" I was genuinely concerned about James, who was normally the life and soul of any party, but I was also curious about my supposed involvement in his grief. "It's Lillian, of course," James said. "Her and that bloody wife of yours." That took me aback. At the time, Violet and I had been married for just over 10 years. I was on the wrong side of 40, and she was just on the other. We were, it seemed to me, so well matched that we almost knew each other's thoughts. I wasn't too pleased about some guy I barely knew talking about my wife like that. "What the hell do you mean by that remark?" I asked firmly, struggling to keep my temper in check. "Oh, come on, Kevin," he scowled at me. "Don't play innocent. You know damn well what's been going on." Something was going on? What was he talking about? "I don't know what you're talking about, James," I said, keeping my voice steady despite realizing how upset he was. "Oh no, Kevin," he nearly spat. "And I suppose you don't know anything about the Golden Flower either." I shook my head in denial. I had never heard of the place. It sounded like a Chinese restaurant or something. I hoped he'd explain further, but instead he downed the last of his pint, glared at me, and stormed out of the pub without another word, leaving me standing there with my insides churning. "What was that all about, then, Kevin?" asked Gary, the landlord, as he walked over. "I'm damned if I know, Gary," I replied. "Better pour me a pint of your best. I've got some thinking to do." I sat there nursing my pint, mulling over what everything meant. The one thought that kept nagging at me was the possibility I least wanted to consider. What were Lillian and my wife up to that had upset James so much? And why on earth did he think I knew all about it? And what role did a Chinese restaurant play in all this? I had no idea. I'd ask Lillian when I saw her later, but I had a sinking feeling it wouldn't be that easy. "Ever heard of a Chinese place called the Golden Flower?" I asked Gary, but he was as clueless as I was. A very puzzled man walked home that evening, struggling to figure out what to say to Violet. I had no idea where this mysterious Chinese restaurant was or if I would get a truthful answer anyway. "Hi, honey. Have a good day at work." Violet greeted me cheerily. Nothing seemed odd, and I had half expected to come home and find her in tears or something. "So-so," I replied, stopped off for a pint at the Red Lion. "Good," she said, still smiling. "You work hard enough and deserve a pint now and then." James was in there, I mentioned casually, noting a slight stiffening in her posture. He seemed a bit upset about something, I continued, and this time I couldn't miss the brief moment her smile faded. "What about that order you were chasing, Kevin?" Violet asked, transparently trying to change the subject. Any idea why he'd be so upset? I persisted, dragging the topic back. "No," she replied, avoiding my gaze. "You were telling me about the order." "No, I wasn't," I countered. "We were talking about James." Violet looked at me unhappily, denied knowing why James would be upset, then turned and disappeared upstairs without another word. Damn it! What about dinner? But that wasn't the biggest thing on my mind right then. I chickened out. I knew it, she knew it, and we didn't talk about it. I pretended nothing was wrong, and Violet acted like everything was normal. What a mess. It was a bloody, awful week. I was in denial, and as for Violet, well, I had no idea. I didn't know then, and I still don't know now. For some reason, I looked up every Chinese restaurant in the area but couldn't find a single one named the Golden Flower. I avoided asking her directly, and I admit it. You might judge me for that, but when the woman you love and adore is hiding something, all you want to do is hide yourself. Believe me, that's how it is when you love someone enough. That Chinese place you were trying to find the other day, Kevin, asked Gary, the pub landlord, as I sat forlornly at his bar a week or so later. Did you ever find it? No, Gary, I replied. I checked the yellow pages and everything, but there's nothing like it around here. Did you look in clubs and lounge bars? He asked. I hadn't, of course. There's a place by that name in the center of town, he informed me. A bit too classy for the likes of you and me, Kevin, he joked, but apparently it's the place to be seen if you're someone. That got my attention, as you can probably imagine. I had to find out where it was. An hour later, I was parked outside the place, all obscured lighting and subdued ambience. I half expected to be refused entry, but they let me in without a problem, even though I was hardly dressed for a night of fine dining. Then again, it was early. I found myself in what looked like a bar lounge. What was that? I didn't really know myself. It was an upscale club sort of place, with a bar, a small dance floor, some private booths, and all. The sort of place where one might want to pick up women, except there weren't any. Bit early for the ladies, my apparently personal barman enlightened me. They don't usually get in until after 10 o'clock or so. I can wait, I told him. It'll be worth your while, he assured me. I took a sip of my drink, wondering what to say next. The decision wasn't too difficult. Does a woman named Violet Walker come here? I asked as casually as I could manage. There are a couple of Violets, he replied. What does she look like? Blonde, I replied, trying to stay calm despite my heart racing. About 5'4", nice legs, medium build, quite decent-sized boobs. Does she come in with a redhead? He asked. Probably, I responded, stunned at my luck. Lillian, Violet's friend, was indeed a redhead, which wasn't all that common. I nodded, trying to play it cool even though I was fuming inside. Yeah, he continued. She comes in most Wednesday nights, and sometimes during the week after work, I suppose. And what does she do when she's here? I asked, immediately regretting how specific and direct my question was. Is she a friend of yours or what? The barman asked, pulling back a bit. Just a friend, I confirmed, but I had spooked him, and he wandered off to the other end of the bar. Damn it. It was a good 10 minutes before he came back my way, and surprise, surprise, he wasn't quite as friendly as before. Another beer, please, I ordered, sliding him a 10-pound note. Keep the change. His eyes didn't exactly light up, but I definitely had his attention. This Violet, I asked, leaning in. What does she get up to here? What do she and her friend do while they're here? We locked eyes for what felt like an eternity until he finally broke down. Is she your girlfriend or something, mate? He asked. What's the interest? She's my wife, I admitted, deciding honesty was my best bet. I want to know what she does on her nights out with her friend. He pulled back again, but a 50 placed on the bar, my hand still firmly on it, got him talking. They come in, dance a bit, chat a bit, he informed me. You know, the usual sort of thing. The usual things married women do in a place like this, I pushed. A lot of them are married, he acknowledged. They flirt just as much as the single girls, sometimes even more. And what about these two we're talking about? I pressed. I'd say, he hesitated before continuing, I'd say they're not much different from the others. So they flirt with the guys here? I asked, my anxiety peaking. I guess you could call it flirting, he admitted, eyes flicking towards the 50-pound note. And how far does this flirting go, then? I pressed further. He shrugged, giving me a blank stare. I slid the note a bit further up the bar, keeping my hand on it. He didn't need any more encouragement. There's a lot of fooling around, he relented. You know, touchy-feely stuff. It happens all the time in a place like this. So what does that mean? I demanded, my insides twisting. They feel up her ass. He shrugged, and I took that as a yes. And her breasts? I probed further. Wouldn't be surprised, the barman agreed. They get up to all sorts once they've had a few drinks and hit the dance floor. What else? I pressed, the ultimate question hanging in the air. He remained silent, his eyes lingering on the 50-pound note still trapped under my hand. Reluctantly, I slid it over and released it. Well, I urged him. Some of the girls go outside with the men, he finally admitted. I'm not saying those two do, but I don't exactly keep tabs on all my customers. I've never seen them actually leave with any guys, but you know. He trailed off, leaving the rest unsaid for me to infer. I pressed the barman for more, but he had reached his limits. The information I had gathered didn't justify further investment. I went home, or was it still home? It was, but not like before, and likely not like it would ever be again. Hi, honey, Violet greeted me as I walked in the door. You're late. Been working overtime. No, I replied as casually as I could. Stopped by the pub and had an extra pint. That's okay, darling, she told me, smiling and reaching out to hug me. As I held her, my mind raced. Was her sudden affection a coincidence, or was this orchestrated because of my movements tonight? It seemed unlikely that the barman would have called her, but the disbelief lingered that he had been speaking about my wife. Nonetheless, I embraced her, once more struck by how wonderful her firm breasts felt against my chest. But the magic of the moment withered as I remembered that other men had likely shared this sensation recently. I wasn't ready to confront her yet. I needed more evidence. The barman hadn't explicitly said she left with other men, but he hadn't denied it either. Still, that didn't mean I couldn't shake things up a bit. Did you find out why James was upset the other night, Violet? I asked, still holding her so she couldn't pull away. No idea at all, she replied almost too quickly, as if rehearsed. Why should I know? Well, Lillian's your friend, I reminded her. You go out with her every Wednesday. I thought she might have mentioned something. Violet tried to pull away, but I held on tightly, refusing to let her avoid my questions. She hasn't said anything to me, Violet replied curtly. Has Lillian been messing around behind James's back? I pushed further, raising the stakes. How would I know? Violet snapped, struggling to free herself from my grip. Well, you go out with her every Wednesday night and come home late. I thought you might have noticed her with some guy. Of course not, Kevin, she exclaimed. Why are you asking me these questions? So, you're sure Lillian isn't cheating on James on Wednesday nights? I pressed, tightening my hold. Let go of me, Violet cried out, finally breaking free. Stop treating me like this. I haven't done anything wrong. I didn't accuse you of anything, Violet, I replied calmly. We were talking about Lillian. Why would you think I suspect you? Her face betrayed 1,000 emotions, and with tears welling up, she fled into the kitchen. Damn it! It was true, but what exactly was true? Dinner that night was as quiet as one could imagine. I didn't accuse her, and she offered no explanations. For the next few days, we endured our tense, fractured existence. When Wednesday night arrived, she got ready as usual for her night out with Lillian. Her outfit was simple, a pretty dress, not too short or revealing, paired with unexceptional high heels. She looked nice, the way a husband might like his wife to dress when she's going out without him. See you later, Kevin, she called out. I won't be too late tonight. I nodded, burying myself in my book, but wondering what not late meant. Normally, she wouldn't return until after midnight, long after I'd gone to bed. Determined to stay up late, I wanted to see when she would really get in and in what state she would be. To my surprise, around 10:30, I heard the front door open. In breezed my lovely wife, looking as fresh as a daisy. Hi, honey, she called out. I missed you, so I came home early. I stood up and took her in my arms, telling her how much I'd missed her over the last few weeks. I spoke of how close we had always been and how that connection had seemed to falter in recent months. Violet cried in my arms, apologizing for neglecting me and promising that things would be different from then on. That night, we shared a moment of profound connection, making love for the first time in a while. It felt rejuvenating. But where did that leave us? I had strong suspicions that my wife had been engaging in questionable behavior over the past few months. I wasn't entirely sure if she had gone too far with any other men. In fact, I doubted she had. However, she had certainly been flirting and behaving like a single woman, possibly even allowing men to touch her inappropriately. Don't get me wrong, I felt deeply hurt and angry about this, but she had narrowly avoided crossing a line, and she knew it. I didn't want to end our otherwise wonderful marriage unless absolutely necessary. If her behavior was truly behind us, perhaps I could let it go. And it did seem like it was over. For the next 5 or 6 weeks, our marriage returned to the early days' sweetness, small gestures, tender touches, and lots of love. Violet and Lillian still had their weekly night out, but they always returned before 11. So, story over, right? Maybe not a perfect resolution, but with a bit of effort, a happy ending. Of course, it wasn't that simple. I should have known better. Around the 7th week of our idyllic recovery, Violet kissed me before heading out to meet Lillian. "Hope you don't mind, honey," she smiled. "We might be a little later than usual. It's one of the other girls' birthday." "That's fine," I replied, smiling back. "Have a good time." I watched her leave wearing a simple skirt that stopped just above her knees and a knitted top that accentuated her lovely figure. She looked nice, and I couldn't help but smile. Then it hit me. She had never mentioned any other girlfriends before. Was this strange, or was I overthinking it? A familiar churning sensation returned to my stomach, the same uneasy feeling I hadn't experienced in weeks. Compelled to act, I picked up the phone and dialed Lillian and James's home number. I hadn't spoken to James since that night in the pub weeks ago and wasn't sure how he'd respond. "Hi, James. It's Kevin," I said, introducing myself, Violet's husband. "Oh, hello, Kevin," he replied, sounding casual. "What can I do for you?" I was just wondering if Lillian had left yet, I asked, unsure of what else to say and regretting not planning the conversation better. "Yes, she's left," he confirmed. "She's meeting Violet at the restaurant. Is it something important?" "No, nothing important," I said. "Everything okay with you and Lillian now?" It was a pointed question, but he sighed and admitted that they had worked things out. He even apologized for being short with me that previous evening, and I assured him it didn't matter. I hung up the phone, feeling a surge of frustration. Meeting at a restaurant, huh? So why had Violet told me just 20 minutes ago that they were meeting at the George and Dragon pub, right after having an early dinner at home? It could have been an innocent mistake, but my gut told me otherwise. After contemplating it for a while, I decided a bit of investigation wouldn't hurt. I headed upstairs, took a quick shower, and changed into casual clothes more suitable for a night out. Half an hour later, I was standing outside the Golden Flower, wondering if I was being foolish. Nevertheless, I was determined to see it through. Another 5 minutes, and I was at the bar, ordering a beer from the same barman I had talked to before. "Seen Violet and her redhead friend in here lately?" I asked, looking him straight in the eye. It took him a few seconds to recognize me, but only a moment longer to notice the tenner I discreetly held in my hand. "No, mate," he replied, taking the money. "Honestly, I haven't seen them for a while." That figured. It seemed I might be on a wild goose chase, but I decided to enjoy my pint anyway and take in the surroundings. The barman's quick acceptance of my tip suggested he was being honest. I finished my pint and headed to the restroom. Coming out, I almost collided with Violet and Lillian. Damn it. I might not have recognized them immediately if they hadn't been so engrossed with the 4 or 5 guys surrounding them. You might wonder why I didn't spot Violet right away. Well, when your wife leaves the house dressed nicely, and then you see her shortly afterward dressed the way she was. Let me explain. Violet was wearing a dress, or at least that's what I think it was supposed to be. Traditionally, dresses cover a reasonable portion of the woman wearing them, but Violet's dress barely did that. This one didn't seem to. Alright, so that's my opinion, but it was practically backless, so short it barely counted as a skirt, and her cleavage was so outrageously displayed that I didn't need to describe it. Come on. I might be exaggerating a bit, but even so, having never seen my loving wife dressed that way before, it was a shock. I didn't even know she owned a dress like that, and Lillian was matching her. Violet must have gotten changed somewhere after leaving our house. I wondered how she would be dressed when she came back home. The guys were all over them, and even though they made a token effort to keep them at bay, it was obvious they were enjoying the attention. "Great to see you back, attractive," I heard one man say. "Where have you two been?" said another. "Come and join us at our table," offered a third, and by then I was well pissed off. I sat in the background while a succession of different suitors approached them, took them onto the dance floor, and proceeded to try to undress them. They nearly succeeded, well, maybe not really, but all the while, Violet and Lillian laughed and giggled, enjoying the show as various parts of their bodies were exposed to the other men watching. I didn't. Let's make this clear, okay? I didn't laugh, and I didn't giggle. I didn't enjoy it at all. I sat there fuming while my wife and her friend flirted with anyone who came near them, and there was no lack of attention. The cow. This was the loving wife who had kissed me goodbye this morning and smiled at me lovingly as she left earlier that night. A friend's birthday, where was the bloody friend? Have one on the house. I looked up, and there stood the barman, you know the one. "Sorry, mate," he continued, but I was telling the truth. Haven't seen the pair of them for some time until tonight. "I know," I told him. "I believe you." "What went wrong?" he asked, looking at me with a degree of compassion. "She did," I said, and we both nodded in agreement. I watched in disgust as my so-called wife flitted from man to man, teasing them outrageously as she disported her half-covered body with no regard for her married status. I watched as a succession of otherwise ordinary chaps took advantage of the two of them, groping their breasts, their asses, and yes, even trying to get their hands up under their skirts, though they fended that off. I felt sick and just wanted to escape, but I had a better idea. Threading my way through the eager throng, I made my way towards Lillian, ignoring what my wife was getting up to. Eventually, she pushed some guy away with a laugh, and I slipped in rather neatly to take his place. "Hi, handsome," she slurred, thanks to all the drinks everyone had poured into her. "What are you after?" As expected, she didn't recognize me, too focused on what sort of physical attention she could get. "Hi, Lillian," I said calmly, "enjoying your night at the restaurant?" It took a few moments for the realization to dawn on her. It was amusing to watch. "Kevin," she finally exclaimed, staring up at me with shock. "Get off me, you bastard," she squealed when it clicked who was groping her. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" "Just sampling what's on offer," I replied, slipping a finger inside her knickers. "No different than what the other guys here are doing." "Get off me! Get off me, you bastard!" she screamed, pushing me away in a panic. "Do you think my wife might be more available to me tonight than you, Lillian?" I stepped back, only to find myself surrounded by a group of aggressive men, all eager to defend my wife and her friend. They looked like they were ready to beat me to a pulp. And at that moment, I was prepared to take them all on. Then the barman intervened. His name was Eric, and perhaps my 50 and the other money was the best investment I'd ever made. "Back off, you lot," Eric shouted. "Leave him alone or deal with me." What a friend! Even though he was only a 50-pound friend, I needed him at that moment as I was about to be pounded to hell. Eric skillfully separated me from the angry group and guided me toward the exit. "Back off, mate, while you're still in one piece," he advised wisely, directing me out the door. And me? I glimpsed Lillian urgently grabbing Violet, pulling her away from another suitor, and shouting at her. As Violet looked over toward me, our eyes locked for a brief, stunning moment. I saw the shock. I saw the disappointment. I saw the shame on her face. Then I was gone. As I carefully navigated my car out of the parking lot, I saw Violet charging out of the club. Some guy was trying to hold her back, and even as I watched, she swung and smacked him full on the face, almost knocking him to his knees. She saw my car and ran after me, no chance of catching up, but refusing to give up. After 100 yards or so, I saw her collapse in the middle of the road. As I drove away, I left her crumpled on the tarmac. Not an easy situation, not for me and not for her. She didn't come home that night, but around midnight, I got a call from James. "Hi, Kevin," he began. "I've got Violet here at our place." "So, what?" I retorted. "She wants to know if she can come home," he continued. "Tell her to buzz off." I yelled into the phone, then slammed it down, leaving it off the hook. Not a nice situation, huh? What to do? I didn't care. Friday evening, I came home from work and saw Violet's car in the driveway. She had come home, but who's home? If things had been bad before, well, you can imagine now. She claimed she hadn't slept with anyone else. Probably true, but she just didn't get it. Why is life so difficult? It got worse. Within days, I found myself hating her, even though I still loved her. I didn't know what to do. She had betrayed me not once but twice, and I couldn't accept it. I could no longer trust her. I needed to talk to someone, but who? I didn't have any close family or special friends. For the last few years since we'd moved, it had been just me and her, Violet. Stupid? Maybe. I wandered back to the Dan Club. Don't ask me why. I couldn't tell you. All I knew was that my troubles seemed to originate from there, and it was there that I had my 50-pound friend. Stupid? Definitely, but it worked for me. You wouldn't be the first husband to find himself in this situation, Eric informed me. It happens all the time. But what do I do about it? I asked despondently. He shrugged and shook his head, looking as clueless as I'd felt. He went off to clean a few glasses, but returned 10 minutes later. "Kevin," he started, "us being on a first-name basis by then. Why not give her a taste of her own medicine?" He nodded towards the other end of the bar, where a very attractive young woman sat alone. "She wouldn't want to know me," I said. "She can't be more than mid-20s. "In my experience," Eric said solemnly, "age isn't usually the problem. Besides, she's probably late 20s, maybe even 30. "You think she's looking to get picked up?" I asked tentatively. It had been ages since I'd tried to chat anyone up. "I'm sure of it," Eric confirmed. "Just waiting for someone like you." "Maybe she's married," I said, almost looking for an excuse, though I felt very tempted. "I'm sure of that too," Eric replied. "Maybe she's waiting for her husband," I hedged. "I highly doubt it, Kevin," Eric grinned, "because I'm pretty sure the guy in the blue top over in that booth is her husband." "What?" "You heard me," he replied. "He came in about 20 minutes ago and took a seat over there. She walked in about 15 minutes later. She keeps glancing at him, and his eyes are glued to her." "You're kidding me, Eric," I stammered. "What's their game?" "Just getting their kicks. I haven't seen these two before, but it happens all the time. A couple comes in and pretends not to know each other. The guy gets his rocks off watching other blokes hit on his wife." "But what happens?" I asked, astounded by his revelation. "Not much, usually. The punter gets a few close-up dances, maybe cops a feel, perhaps a kiss or two, but rarely more. Occasionally, the guy might persuade the woman to step outside. It depends on the couple and how far they're willing to go." I glanced over at the young, dark-haired woman. It was hard not to notice that she was dressed provocatively. Short black cocktail dress with a scooped neckline, attractive high heels, great legs, and she was showing a lot of them on that bar stool. "How far do you think she'd go?" I asked my host. "Not far," he estimated. "She's too nervous. Could be their first time trying this. I reckon you'd be safe enough, Kevin. Have a bit of fun, but you wouldn't need to get too involved." I looked at Eric, impressed by how well he had gauged my mood. I did fancy a bit of romancing, but didn't want it to go too far. Then again, that's why he was such a good barman. "Think she'd go for me then?" I was still uncertain, still nervous about approaching a strange woman. "Well, that young guy over there just tried to chat her up and got nowhere," he informed me. She glanced at the guy in blue, and he shook his head. Maybe he didn't like the look of him, or maybe the guy was just too young. You might get lucky. Bloody hell. Was all this going on under my nose? Look, Eric, I can't just go over and say hello to her. She might tell me to bugger off. Eric laughed and told me to leave it to him. He'd go over, give her a drink, and say it was from me. How do you know what she wants to drink? I asked. I'm a barman, he replied with a smile. That's my job. Silly question. I sat there while he concocted a drink I didn't recognize and then strolled to the other end of the bar. He offered her the drink, and she looked down towards me. I nodded my head in a friendly gesture. The girl accepted the drink, quickly glanced at Blue Shirt, and nodded back to me, raising her glass in acknowledgement. I was in. My heart was pounding, unsure of what I was getting myself into. Trying not to make a fool of myself, I hopped off my stool and approached her. Hello, she greeted. Thanks for the drink. My name's Kevin, I said. Classic introduction, right? Hello, Kevin, she responded. I'm Victoria. So far, so good. I noticed Eric discreetly giving me a thumbs up from behind the bar. It was only then that I saw how nervous she was. She wasn't shaking, but she was close. We chatted about random topics for a while, and gradually she relaxed. I did too. Things were going well, so I asked her to dance. I'm no Fred Astaire, but I know the basics. She followed my simple steps, starting out stiff in my arms, but eventually softening. By the second dance, she was comfortably close, not too close, just right. She felt wonderful. I wanted to kiss her, but the moment never presented itself, so I simply enjoyed holding a beautiful woman in my arms. After the third dance, she suggested we return to our seats and excused herself to go to the ladies' room. It was only when Blue Shirt picked up his mobile phone that I realized she'd gone to call him. Maybe she was seeking his approval. I wasn't sure, but everything so far indicated she did, so I hoped he would too. This was confirmed when Victoria returned, smiling, and climbed back onto her stool. Whether by accident or design, her short skirt rode up even higher, revealing a lengthy expanse of her bare legs. What are you grinning about? She asked, noticing my amusement. What do you think? I answered somewhat unkindly. Despite her beauty, I had no intention of being made a fool by the two of them. To my surprise, Victoria slumped on her stool slightly, and I thought I detected a tear in her eye. I regretted my harsh words. Sorry, Victoria, I finally said. I don't want to upset you, but it's all a bit obvious, you know. Listen to me. Talking like a world-weary sophisticate. Just half an hour ago, Eric had explained this whole setup to me, and I'd been completely naive. I don't know what you're talking about, Victoria mumbled unhappily. You mean you don't know who Blue Shirt, over there it is? I responded, but more gently. Oh God, why did I say that? I had made her cry. What do you do in situations like this? Instinctively, I reached over and put my arm around her. Sorry, Victoria, I found myself consoling. I didn't mean to be nasty. You're just like my Dan husband, she sobbed into my shoulder. I gently kissed her brow, whispering sweet reassurances to calm her. Let's dance again, I suggested, pulling her up. I was aware that sooner or later, Blue Shirt would notice something was wrong. On the dance floor, she melted back into my arms, quietly sobbing through the first dance. What's wrong, Victoria? I asked as I sensed her beginning to settle. I won't do anything you don't want me to. It's not you, Kevin, she said unhappily. It's that bastard Stephen, my husband. Over the next few minutes, she reluctantly shared her story. Under her husband's pressure for the past 6 months, she was coerced into fulfilling his fantasy of seeing her with another man. Disgusted, she had steadfastly refused. But one night, Stephen came home drunk with a couple of friends. Oh no, I interrupted. Don't tell me he forced you. No, she cried into my shoulder. But after he teased and taunted me, I told him to piss off and went to go to my bedroom. Good for you, I congratulated her. But he grabbed me and pulled me down onto the sofa, she wept. He held me down and undid my blouse while the other two watched. How could any husband do that? I wondered aloud, my temper rising. And it didn't stop there, she continued, starting to sob again. He pulled me to my feet and ordered the others to undo my bra. Once it fell off, he turned me around, trapping my arms behind my back. I held her closer, at a loss for words. They squeezed my breasts until the pain was unbearable. Then one of them undid my jeans belt and unzipped them. I thought they were going to strip me naked, she said, shaking. But I screamed as loud as I could, and finally, Stephen told them to stop. What happened next? Stephen just held me while my jeans slipped down my legs anyway. By the time they were down to my knees, the three of them were standing there, laughing and taunting me. I felt a surge of anger, tempted to walk over to Blue Shirt and slug him. You should have reported them to the police, I suggested, knowing it wasn't much help. How could I? She blurted out before bursting into tears once more. When she finally composed herself, she explained that her husband had threatened her, warning that she would get hurt if she didn't go along with his plan. After much discussion, they had reached an agreement. She would go into a bar and let a stranger pick her up, which seemed less severe than the other possibilities. Why don't you just leave him? I asked. Maybe I should, Victoria replied. But in some way, maybe I still love him. And what's he expecting you to do tonight? I inquired. Oh, I don't know, she responded sadly. Maybe go outside with some guy or something. I just don't know. How about we go outside now, Victoria? She looked up at me with a mixture of disappointment, distrust, and perhaps even horror. I'm not sure exactly how to describe it. I thought, or rather, I hoped that. Don't worry, I interrupted. You're safe with me, and your husband will think you're following his orders. Reluctantly, she let me guide her to the exit, clearly uncertain whether she could trust me. As we left, I caught Eric's eye. The look of surprise he gave me said it all. I'd explain later. Once we found my car, we leaned against it. I handed her my handkerchief to wipe her eyes and told her to take her time and settle down. Thanks, Kevin, she mumbled. It was all the gratitude I needed. Soon enough, Victoria leaned into me, and I instinctively wrapped my arms around her, much as I would comfort an upset child. We stood there holding each other for some time, finding an extraordinary sense of comfort as she gradually relaxed. I dipped my head and planted a gentle kiss on her forehead. It felt like the natural thing to do, but it seemed to surprise Victoria, who raised her head to look at me. And, before I knew it, I was kissing her again, this time full on the lips. What should have been just a peck lingered a second or two too long. We locked eyes for a fleeting moment before Victoria leaned in again, her lips offering a second kiss that grew increasingly passionate. She pressed her gorgeous, slender body against mine, and I responded instinctively. The straps of her dress slipped off her shoulders, confirming my earlier suspicion she wore nothing underneath. We embraced, exchanging tongues as her dress slid down, leaving her naked to the waist. It had happened. I hadn't intended for it to, but it had. I'm sorry, Victoria, I whispered. I didn't mean for this to happen. Oh, Kevin, she moaned, responding to my kisses with even more fervor than before. I was torn. I wanted to take her to my car, but what kind of person would that make me? Thoughts of my wife's behavior flashed through my mind, and guilt overwhelmed me. I think we better pull your dress up, Victoria, I suggested. Yes, Kevin. Thank you. I think we should, she agreed. And just like that, it was over. Victoria stepped back, wearing a nervous smile as I took in her half-naked beauty. Almost reluctantly, she pulled her dress back up and made herself respectable again. Thank you, Kevin, she reiterated. That couldn't have been easy. It wasn't, I admitted, already feeling a pang of regret for stopping. I'd better get back to Stephen, she murmured. He'll want to know what happened. What will you tell him, Victoria? I don't know, she replied. Whatever he wants to hear, I guess. I'll make something up. We exchanged glances, perhaps both wondering what it would have been like if we had met before Stephen entered the picture. I know I was. Can I see you again? I asked. I'm not sure, Kevin, she responded. It might be best if we didn't. It's not going to end here, Victoria. Stephen isn't going to change. He's not going to suddenly stop. I know, she sobbed, tears streaking down her cheeks once more. I'll just have to deal with it somehow. At least give me your phone number, I pleaded. Maybe I could help. I can't, Kevin, Victoria said. I daren't, but perhaps if you give me yours. And that's how we left it. I handed her my number, and after one last kiss, she turned and walked back towards the bar entrance. I stood there feeling utterly hopeless and alone. She gave one last look back, a sweet smile, and then she was gone. Gone forever out of my life. With sadness, I got into my car to drive home. I had my own problems to confront there. We can't keep going on like this. I wasn't sure if it was a question or a statement, but either way, my wife was right. Life at home had become unbearable, with both of us carefully avoiding each other, neither willing to take the first step. We no longer even shared the same bedroom, and she only begrudgingly cooked meals for me. Okay, I conceded. What do you have to say about your behavior? Don't you dare talk to me as if I were a little schoolgirl, Violet retorted angrily. I've told you over and over again that I didn't let any of them sleep with me. So, what do you call what I saw you doing the other night? I demanded heatedly. Letting other men kiss you and grope you, acting more like a whore than my wife. Damn you, Kevin, she spat. You're so goody-goody. What's wrong with me having a bit of fun if it doesn't harm you? I'm a little housewife all week long, so why can't I let my hair down sometimes? So I let some guys feel me up. So what? I like it, and they like it, and you're none the worse for it. I've never held back on you when you've wanted to make love. Our sensible discussion was quickly spiraling out of control. There might have been some twisted logic hidden in her words, but I couldn't grasp it. So, you think it's okay for other men to use my wife's body for their amusement? I challenged. Yes, why not? Violet nearly screamed, her voice rising with anger. It's my body, and I'll choose who gets to touch it and who doesn't. You haven't been much good to me lately, so if you don't like it, you can go to hell. And what if I behaved like you, Violet? I asked, struggling to keep my temper in check and hoping to introduce some reason. How would you feel if I went out and messed around with some girl I met in a pub? You. Violet scoffed, a mocking smile spreading across her face. You with another woman. You wouldn't have the guts, you pathetic wimp. If another woman hit on you, you'd run a mile. Ouch. That one stung more than she knew. Flashes of the previous evening surged in my mind. The sensation of holding another beautiful young woman's bare breasts in my hands had been intoxicating. I briefly considered shocking Violet with this revelation. But I didn't. I held my tongue, thinking it might be the right decision to keep me as the innocent party. Not that my actions felt comparable to Violet's behavior or her brazen attitude, for that matter. I don't think this conversation is getting us anywhere, Violet, I said, trying to defuse the situation. Bloody right it isn't, you spineless loser, she shouted, having completely lost her temper. I'm going out with Lillian again tonight, and this time I might give you something to really worry about. Now look, Violet, But it was futile. She turned on her heels and stomped off to her bedroom, slamming the door so hard the whole house shook. Oh dear, what to do? I poured myself a glass of my special cognac and settled into my favorite armchair, waiting to see if Violet would come to her senses. But truth be told, I no longer had any idea who my wife truly was. Don't wait up for me, Kevin, Violet said spitefully as she came back down the stairs. I might come home tonight, and I might not. I looked up, intending to reason with her, and got a shock. If I thought the dress she wore the other night was revealing, this outfit was downright scandalous in my eyes. 4 or 5-inch red high heels, a skimpy white blouse slashed halfway down to her waist, almost see-through and leaving little to the imagination. You look like a prostitute, I said sadly, my heart breaking a little more with each word. I won't be selling it tonight, honey. I'll be giving it away, she taunted, eyes blazing with unsuppressed rage. Here, let me show you what I'll be offering them. With that, she lifted the front of her tiny skirt. See, no panties. Think I'll get many takers. Put your panties on, Violet, I tried to reason with her. You can't go out like that. It's dangerous. Go to hell, you bastard. They won't have to assault me. I'll be offering. Violet continued to stand there, teasing me, her skirt still held high. Unexpectedly, I felt a wave of calm wash over me. If you walk out dressed like that, and with that attitude, Violet, I said in a steady voice, we're done. Our marriage is over. I won't be here when you get back. Stuff you, Kevin, she retorted. You've held me back for years. Now it's my turn to have some fun. I'll kiss who I want, and there's nothing you can do about it. Staring at her, I wondered where the love had gone. Not long ago, this woman had been the center of my world. I loved her deeply, but now I couldn't fathom the contempt she seemed to hold for me. All right, Violet, I said, determined to take the wind out of her sails. Go ahead. Have a great time. Be careful crossing the road. What do you mean by that, Kevin? Violet's mouth gaped open, perhaps realizing she pushed too far. Is that all you've got to say? No, just one more thing, I added. Why don't you piss off? I stood up and walked into the kitchen, more for dramatic effect than necessity. Leaning on the sink, I sighed deeply and waited to see her reaction, half dreading she might come after me to apologize. But no. She must have thought it over because it was a full 5 or 6 minutes later that I heard her high heels clicking on the parquet of our hallway, followed by the slamming of the front door. I'd have to get the foundations checked if she kept that up much longer. That was it. Finished. Packing a bag took longer than I thought, but within an hour, I was out of there and in my car, heading for a nearby hotel where my company had an account. It didn't take long to check in. I only booked one night since I had no idea what my plans would be for the next few days, let alone the future. It still made no sense that I had left home. Why me? About an hour later, my mobile phone rang, and I saw it was Violet. I hesitated but decided to face it sooner or later. Hi, Violet. What do you want? Where the hell are you, Kevin? I came back home, and you're not here. I said I wouldn't be. It was your choice, Violet. Now don't be silly, Kevin. Where are you? When are you coming home? No time soon, Violet. Have a good night's sleep, and maybe we'll talk in the morning. Now wait, Kevin, I want. But I cut the connection and turned the phone off. The silly cow had thought twice about her actions and gone home to make it up with me. Or maybe she couldn't find any strange men to hang out with and had given up. How did I know? I'd let her sweat on it overnight. I went to work the following morning, and of course I couldn't just switch my work phone off. By 10 o'clock, Violet had rung me 4 times, and I had run out of excuses for my secretary, so I spoke to her and promised to see her at home after work in the evening. Can't say I was looking forward to it. I'm sorry, Kevin. I shouldn't have walked out on you like that last night, she greeted me, approaching with her arms held out, and I certainly shouldn't have talked to you like that. Well, I didn't fall for it this time. As she walked towards me, I sidestepped and went to the other side of the sofa. She looked crestfallen. We have to talk about this, honey, she continued, following me around the room. I think you've got this all out of context. It's not as serious as you think it is. Letting other guys feel you up isn't serious then, Violet, I challenged her. I've told you, Kevin, she replied, avoiding my question. I didn't let any of them do anything more to me than that. I suppose a few of them got their hands inside your panties, though. That caught her out. She hesitated, maybe wondering whether to lie or not, but fair play to her, she came clean, more or less. 1 or 2 of them, maybe, Violet eventually admitted, unable to meet my eye. Okay, Violet, I demanded. What was it? 1 of them or 2 of them? She just looked at me, dumbfounded, not knowing what to say. Well, which is it, 1 or 2? I pressed her. And exactly how many times each? Well, maybe it was a bit more than 2, honey, but I promise it didn't happen that often. She was clearly uncomfortable with this line of questioning and tried to change the subject. I toyed with her a little before letting her steer the conversation. How are we going to move past this, Kevin? She finally asked. I don't want to live without you, and I know you still love me. Her choice of words was interesting, but I chose to ignore it. What did you have in mind, Violet? I asked. If you come back home, honey, I'd be willing to compromise, she offered. I'd go out less and maybe not dress the way I have been. I just sat there, silent, staring at her. How does that sound, honey? She almost whined. Do we have a deal? So, you're suggesting you'll let other men touch you, not once a week, but once every 2 weeks? Is that what you're offering? I asked. Don't be so crude, Kevin, she shot back, anger etching her face. I promise I won't let anyone do that to me from now on. I admit I had too much to drink and went too far. How about this? You don't go out with Lillian at all, I suggested, holding onto the fragile hope that we might work things out. Or if you do, you just go to a restaurant or the cinema. Christ, Kevin, she retorted. Don't you trust me? Can I go out and have a bit of fun? She just didn't get it, did she? Go out and have all the fun you want, dear, I replied quietly. I'll move into the spare room, and you can do whatever you damn well please. End of conversation. Why should I be the one to leave our home when she was the one in the wrong? It was likely the end of our marriage as well, but I don't think Violet realized that at the time. Life continued much as before, if not a little better. At least we talked, and my meals weren't handed to me like poison. Violet even did my laundry again. That Wednesday, she didn't go out with Lillian. What an exemplary wife she was turning out to be. A week later, at work, my mobile rang, displaying an unfamiliar number. Hello, came a woman's voice. It's Victoria. Can we talk? Oh, great. I wouldn't say I'd forgotten Victoria or how nice she felt in my arms, but I had assumed I'd never hear from her again. My life was already complicated enough without her problems adding to it. Of course we can talk, Victoria. How can I help? Is everything all right? All right. I admit it. I'm a sucker for a woman in distress. It's a bit cheeky, Kevin, she continued, but could I ask you for a favor, please? Why do women do that? Asking if they can ask for a favor essentially pre-commits you to agreeing to whatever they want. Sure thing, Victoria, I replied. What's up? Told you, I'm a sucker. It's Stephen, my husband, she began. The story I'd fed him about what we did the other night has satisfied him for now, but he's pushing me to take it another step further. How much further? Was that a foolish question or what? He wants to watch me with another man, she blurted out, her embarrassment palpable even over the phone. Now hang on, Victoria. I started to protest, but she cut me off. No, Kevin, please don't misunderstand. I'm not asking for that. I wouldn't do that. I told him I'd go off and do it with another man and then tell him about it. It's not exactly what he wants, but it'll keep him off my back for a while until I figure things out. So, what exactly do you want from me, Victoria? I was hoping you could meet me somewhere public where he could see us together and assume the worst. You could leave right after if you don't want to stick around, and I'd go to a movie or something before heading home later with some story. I considered it. Poor woman. Why do some women have to put up with men like that? She sounded desperate. But what will you do in the longer term? I wondered. How will I take you to dinner, Victoria? I found myself offering. No point in wasting an evening. She seemed quite pleased with my suggestion. So I chose a Wednesday, knowing Violet would be out with Lillian. Violet left early in high spirits, even giving me a peck on the cheek. She was dressed fairly conservatively, though that was how she dressed before the incident that shattered my trust. I won't be late, honey, she called out. You'll see, this isn't going to hurt you in any way. She smiled. I smiled back. She still didn't get it, did she? Violet barely noticed I was ready to go out as well. I left shortly after her. Hi, Kevin, a voice greeted me as I scanned the bar. Bloody hell. The first time I met Victoria, she was striking, but tonight she was breathtaking. As I stood there, I couldn't help but be awestruck. She wasn't just pretty, she was stunning, her little blue dress accentuating her beauty perfectly. You look different tonight, I remarked. I dressed for a man I like a lot, she replied with a grin. The other evening, I was there under protest. Well, you look absolutely beautiful, Victoria, I told her. It will be my pleasure to take you out tonight. I leaned in to kiss her on the cheek, but she surprised me, pulling me in for a full, lingering kiss on the lips. Wow, I exclaimed when we finally broke apart. That was for Stephen's benefit, she said, subtly indicating someone behind her. But if you really believe that, you're a fool. I glanced discreetly behind her and spotted a familiar figure, blue shirt, now morphed into brown jumper. Not quite as catchy. How about another one for his benefit? I suggested. This time, as our lips met again, her slender body pressed against mine. It felt sublime. Let's go, I ventured, feeling exhilarated. Where to? She asked with a playful sparkle in her eyes. Does it matter? No, Victoria replied, suddenly serious. Anywhere you want to go, then I'll follow. It felt like we were about to ride off into the sunset together, but in reality, we walked a short distance down the high street to an Italian restaurant I had booked earlier. Maybe not as romantic as a sunset ride, but still, it was a charming evening. We enjoyed a delightful meal with a bottle of Chianti, chatting like old friends. Could you believe it? She was an Arsenal supporter, the best football club in the world. Her family had been lifelong Arsenal fans. What more could I ask for? We were having the time of our lives. After dinner, we headed to a new bar in town, where I found myself dancing with the most beautiful woman in the room. It was perfect, almost too perfect. And then the bubble burst. In walked my wife, Violet, with Lillian and a gaggle of male companions. Violet was wearing the same dress, but had hiked up the skirt by 6 inches and unbuttoned half the front. I looked from Violet to Victoria and wondered what I ever saw in my wife. Sure, Violet was pretty, but when it came to class and style, she couldn't hold a candle to Victoria. It was confession time, not easy, considering Victoria, and I hadn't even broached the subject of my marital status. "What's up, Kevin?" Victoria asked before I could even say a word. "The woman over there with that group," I said, indicating Violet. "Unfortunately, that's my wife." Victoria's eyes never left Violet. "Yes, the blonde," I admitted reluctantly. "Poor you," she said, still staring at Violet. "How did a nice guy like you end up with someone like that? You know the reputation she has around town, right?" Victoria's comment grabbed my attention. "You know her, then?" I asked, intrigued. "No, but my bloody husband Stephen does," Victoria replied accusingly. "And he wants me to act just like her." Oh dear, what a small world. Maybe Violet hadn't been completely honest with me after all. "Come on," Victoria said, pulling me up from my chair. Before I knew it, she was leading me straight towards Violet and her entourage. "Hi, gang," Victoria announced loudly, standing boldly in front of them. They'd all turned to look, but if any recognized her, they didn't show it. What was unmistakable, though, was how she completely outshone the other women. "Maybe you know Kevin," she said, introducing me boldly. "You two girls should find out what a real man is like instead of messing around with these wasters." That threw a wrench in the works. For a moment, I anticipated a brawl. I was ready for it, but I underestimated Victoria. "Violet," she called out to my wife, who stood there dumbfounded, staring at us. "If you're not going to appreciate him, then I will." She flashed a radiant smile, kissed me deeply, then took my arm and led me out of the pub. As we walked, her exaggerated hip sway was impossible to miss. My last sight of Violet was her standing with her mouth agape in shock as chaos erupted around her. What a laugh. As soon as we got to the car, still laughing, Victoria's phone rang. I listened in on her side of the conversation. "Hello, Stephen. I'm busy. What do you want?" "No, Kevin isn't here right now, so we can talk if we must." She winked at me as she spoke. "Yes, I'm probably going to make love with him." Another wink. What was that supposed to mean? "No, I'm not bringing him home so you can watch." "No, Stephen. I won't do it." "I don't care what you threaten, Stephen. I won't do it." "Well, bugger off, you weird bastard, and don't expect me home tonight." She ended the call and tossed the phone onto the back seat. "I never want to go back to him, Kevin," she declared, more confidently than I had heard her speak before. "There's no future with him for me." What do you want to do then, Victoria? I replied, 'cause I'm finding myself in the same situation as you. Thank you for watching this video to the end. If you liked it, please like it and subscribe to the channel. See you soon.